Okay.
First of all, some new things here. If you want to access the photos of the event, you can scan the QR code and you'll find everything there. I'll just give you a moment to do that.
That's good.
Okay. And then some basic rules for the session. So the first of all is, as you enter the Zoom meeting, please enter with your full name. If you want to ask a question, raise hand using the Zoom function. Then you will be unmuted and you will be able to speak. When speaking, switch on the video, state your name and affiliation, and finally, do not share links to the Zoom meetings, even with your colleagues. So now, thank you for giving the time, and now the floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks, Maria, and apologize for starting.
Thank you. You did half of my job.
Okay, and then let me shortly introduce the people beside me on the panel. On my left side, we have Zydrunas Tamazauskas. I hope I pronounce it correctly.
More or less, yeah. It's actually Zydrunas Tamazauskas.
Zydrunas,
yes.
Okay.
And in short, it's fine to call me just Z.
Z, okay. He's the Chief Technology Officer at Oxylabs. We will come later back what you invent and what's your task on this table. Also on my left side, and from your perspective, it's of course the right one. It's Anna Ulivczynska. She's the coordinator of the Polish Safer Internet Center. Happy to have you here at this panel. And on my other side, you can see Andrew Campling. He's working as a trustee for the IWF, the Internet Watch Foundation. Also in the room, I really give a warm welcome to Irina Gudikova. She's the head of the Democratic Institutions and Freedom Department of the Council of Europe. She's over there. And we have also Maciej Grown from NASK Poland with us to bring in perspective and answer questions if necessary. If you read the description in the wiki, you recognize that there are several changes also here in the panel, but also in the roles. It was not foreseen that I am the moderator. We decided yesterday for some reasons to change it, but I will be supported by Sofia and by Francesco as a reporter of this session. Francesco will wrap up the session at the end of this 1 hour and give the first or propose the messages, and then we can all work collaboratively the next days to finalize them. Also, we have a remote moderation. It's done by Maria from the EuroDIG support team, and we have Sabrina Vorbau also online, which supports this task. With Irina, we decided and agreed not to repeat her statement as she gave it previously this morning, but she's here with us to answer your questions and give, if necessary, some insight from her perspective of the Council of Europe. And as you mentioned, or I will inform you that this is a kind of continuous workshop. So we had a previous session, workshop 1A on child safety online, where we discussed on updates on legal issues and proposals or acts coming into force in the UK, and proposals by the European Commission to fight child sexual abuse online. And now we go the next step and discuss more about protecting vulnerable groups online from harmful content. What are new technical approaches? And with all this having in mind, again, I think we can start now. And I would like to introduce or to ask Andrew first to give us a perspective of a civil society organization and what kind of harms and violations users are facing online. What are we talking about?
Yes, so good morning, everyone. As Torsten said, my name is Andrew Campling. I'm a trustee of the Internet Watch Foundation, whose task is to eradicate child sex abuse material online. I'm not technically speaking on behalf of the IWF, since I was only asked in the break to join the panel. So this is my view on the subject matter, so just for clarification. To try and give a balanced view as best I can of the perspective from civil society and some of the harms and challenges. In terms of focusing on child sex abuse material, to be blunt, what we're talking about is effectively the rape and sexual abuse of children, mainly but not exclusively girls, often very young children, so younger than 3 years old in some cases. The greatest growth at the moment seems to be in so-called self-generated abuse material. That's often produced either something that is produced voluntarily and shared between friends, but then misused, or increasingly is where someone's coerced into producing material, sort of tricked by effectively organized crime groups who are operating very aggressively online, where typically their tactic is to trick you into sharing some intimate material and then immediately blackmailing you financially, usually, as a consequence of that. And the target, the greatest sort of focus group for that is teenage boys rather than girls, unusually, for that particular type of abuse. And it has very serious consequences. There are instances where children have committed suicide within 30 minutes of the abuse happening. So it is serious and has very direct, often fatal consequences. So it shouldn't be sort of thought as a trivial example. The sorts of technologies that are used, there's a lot of research now which shows that the abusers will target platforms where children are often on, whether that's common social media platforms or platforms more overtly targeted at children. They usually will pretend themselves to be young people on the platform, even though typically they're not. And they will try and move the target as rapidly as they can onto an end-to-end encrypted messaging system in order to undertake the abuse and then the blackmail, in the case of the sextortion blackmail. To give you a sense of scale, some recent research tells us there's about 300 million child victims of child sex abuse globally. So this is not a small crime. There's also research which tells us that once someone has viewed CSAM content, there's a 40% chance that they will immediately seek access with children. So therefore, there's a high probability that they will go on themselves to reoffend and grow the scale of victims. And then briefly, in terms of the sort of conflict here, if you will, in civil society, there's some of the loudest voices come across as very pro-privacy, and that the consequences of countering child sex abuse are that it impinges on the privacy of the rest of us. Depending on your point of view, that might be a price worth paying for those 300 million victims. But also from a technical point of view, to try and bring it back to the subject here, you can do things like age verification in a privacy-preserving way. You don't need to disclose data about who you are to a platform. You can do it either through facial scanning, which is increasingly highly accurate now, or through other means, which we can maybe discuss later. But also for things like client-side scanning, again, you can do that in a privacy-preserving way as well. The biggest challenge is if you want to get into things like monitoring for risk of grooming. That's hard, in my view, to do in a privacy-preserving way, because you have to start to scan the content of messages, which is, so you're going to have much higher risk of impinging on privacy and also of creating false positives. But for known CSAM, I don't see there to be a privacy challenge, and I'll maybe stop there.
Okay, thanks, Andrew, very much for this start in the topic, for this overview, and also for building bridges for ongoing discussions. But first, I want to know from Anna, your perspective of the Safer Internet Center in Poland, regarding your practical experience. What groups of harmful content conclude the biggest part of harmful content? What's your perception?
Mm-hmm. I would relate also what Andrew said about the self-generated content, talking about the CSAM, so child abuse sexual materials. More and more % of those materials are those self-generated. So this is something that we see now as a process that is coming. Sometimes it is a consequence of sexting activities when it goes not where it should. But then it is also, yes, sure. And also it's, I have problems with my throat, so forgive me, but I will try. But sometimes it's a consequence of course, adult manipulation, and the child generate the content and release it into the internet. But apart from CSAM content, apart from this self-generated CSAM content, there is also something that especially we see in our public sphere on the internet. These are kind of a pathological content. I'm not sure if you know what I mean, but that can be called pathostreams, or that can be called pathological content videos. And what I'm talking about, it can be like a live internet broadcast of some pathological situation showing alcoholic libations with a content that glorify violence, that glorify aggressive behavior, that glorify sexual abuse as well, because even these kind of situations are on live broadcasted to the internet. It can be all broadcasted live, but it can be also like produced videos, music videos that really reach very easily children. These are things, very catchy. Very often those producers, which it sounds strange, but they really sometimes they go to the mainstream, like they Dance with Stars even. In the same time producing very dangerous, very aggressive, very violent materials. And I think it's one of the really, really big challenges. And also the government that we have now is also very focused on how to fight with this pathostreaming and pathological videos. That would be something that I would like to maybe focus on now.
Okay, thank you so much, Anna, for this. And we've heard now about several kinds of violation or harmful content children and other vulnerable groups face online while using digital services. And we want to talk about new technical approaches to protect users. So we are glad to have Jiduraj here at the panel. And as I mentioned before, he's the Chief Technology Officer at OxyLab. And OxyLab has invented an AI product to remove child sexual abuse material. What was your motivation, and how does it work?
All right, first of all, a little bit background. So OxyLabs is a leading web intelligence platform. We work with companies like from Global Fortune 500. And we heavily invest into the intelligence part, obviously, that is collecting publicly available data. So for us, ethical part is an essence in the company itself. So why we're doing this, and we are not, going into the red lines or things like that. And we understood that we have quite a lot of experience and expertise within the company. And we decided that we want to join some governmental opportunities in helping to fight some sort of, this, not necessarily CSAM content, but anyhow to help our governments with the data that we can collect. So, and I think that's most important is to understand that data is really, really that easily accessible, and I really feel what you're saying. It's really sometimes easy to get, and it's way easier to put. And for us, it was kind of a sense to build some sort of tooling with the help of AI, of course. As mentioned, like it's too much of human effort required to to review. There's mental issues, of course, psychological. So what you see there, it might damage yourself in a way. And and how to fight this. So we have a few million websites here in Lithuania, right? So, and we thought that, okay, so if we have this vast infrastructure to get this data, why not use it to build a tool which scans the internet, searches for CSAM images right now, and then reports to the communications regulatory authority, like before Christina was presenting. So yeah, so that's why we are here, and we actually found a way to do that. So we employed AI technologies, so machine learning algorithms. They are not so sophisticated as of now, but we are looking into retraining them and making them more accurate. And it's not a problem to get this data, as I mentioned, at least for us. But the problem is that even AIs make mistakes. So it's not necessary that if it finds the CSAM, let's say the image matches age. Let's say it's a child, right? The image matches like nudity content. All right, but it could be like various things. It could be like family photos. It could be any stuff that shouldn't be on internet, but somehow it's there. And so the system actually scans internet daily and sends data to the communications authority, and then it kind of flags which of the contents are the most likely to be CSAM actually. And then there's a manual effort on the authority side to actually confirm it. Because, like colleague mentioned as well, there's a few things in fighting this, is that we should regulate this as a fact, yes. The systems are like in infancy yet mode, I would say. And we need to somehow ensure that innocent people would not be prosecuted in a way that it could be. But our experience shows that actually there are quite a lot of such content instances, and together with the authority, we managed to at least file a few police cases even. So that's, for us, it was a really great achievement. It means that we as a technology company has a lot of potential here and expertise, and we are giving them as a pro bono basis to the government and governmental institutions, and we try to help them.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thanks for this insight and your contribution. I guess it's really necessary to hear or to understand that there are humans in the loop, because you mentioned also yes. Artificial intelligence make not only right decisions, and it was also a topic of concern yesterday raised by the young people from the EuroDIG, that we need transparency, and that decisions not only can be taken alone by artificial intelligence. To let you know, I would like to ask several questions again to the panel, and then opens up for a broader conversation. So if you want to share your thoughts, your concerns, or you want to support any position or ask a question, then you could prepare yourself and to be ready for this. Now, we've heard that there are really hard issues. There are heinous crimes we need to protect users online, and we have also the possibilities and opportunities to do this with technical approaches. What seems to be necessary is that the different organizations and perspectives are cooperating. So I would like to ask Anna, Do you have such collaboration agreements between different parties in the space? How you are working in Poland?
Yes, just maybe to start with describing the Polish Safer Internet Center, because I'm not sure if you know how those national Safer Internet Centers looks like. You need to have to be co-financed by the European Commission to be in the network of those national Safer Internet Centers. You have to have 3 components. So you need to have the awareness activities. You need to have a hotline dealing with illegal content, and you need to have helpline giving a support day-to-day, 24-hour a day to children and young people. So we, as NASC, I represent the National Research Institute. So we have at our organizations, we have awareness activities and we have hotline. But also we needed to have helpline and also to join forces doing this awareness actions, educational actions. So we have like the most important agreement that we have is actually the agreement between us and our consortium partner, which is NGO. It's Empowering Children Foundation, and they are operating this well-known number 116, 111. And we cooperate actually with them for over 20 years, which I think it's really a lot. I mean, it's a very strong and well-developed cooperation. And it's absolutely crucial for us because we need psychologists, therapists to work in helplines, and we couldn't do it by ourselves within our institute, which is more technical, with a technical approach. Of course, having hotline in our organization, we have agreements signed with the police. We renew this agreement every 2-3, depends on a year, but we have to renew this agreement. And it's actually quite described in details how we operate, because as you know, hotlines firstly check, this is the main role of the hotline, is to check on what server, in what country the illegal content is located. And then we cooperate or locally with the police, or we send it to other hotline in other country where the server is located. So this is quite in details described how we operate with the police. And then we are a trusted flagger for few VLOPs, so for selected platforms. And of course, without that, it also wouldn't be possible to work effectively. And then we have other cooperations, maybe smaller, but also very important. Like we have agreements with schools having representatives into our youth panel, and also to be able to train their educators, their teachers. We have agreements with institutions that consist our advisory board, because it's also totally necessary to be surrounded all the time doing the program, to have the advisory board to consult with them all the things that we plan, that we are doing. Then who we cooperate more? Let me think. We have also another advisory board. We have parental advisory board, and this is something also very important for us, because in this board we have also parental influencers, but not those putting the photos like you described online, but those reasonable and doing right things, and also helping us actually to reach parents, because this is something that is most difficult, I would say. We can easier reach schools, educators, but with the parents, it's like a huge problem. It's sometimes strange when I say that, because I think lots of us here are parents, and we would say, oh, it's not difficult to have parents. We care, but it's not that issue. Actually, it's very hard. So we also have signed agreements with the people who are in this kind of our advisory board. So as you can see, we have lots of different collaborations. But also, like, to sum up, it's also sometimes difficult, because we used to cooperate a lot with the industry, with the platforms. But now with DSA, of course, we have to be more cautious about this. We have to take care to everything to be transparent. You have to be like open consultations, because we, especially as a public institution, we have to now somehow challenge this new situation. But we also absolutely have to cooperate also with these big platforms, because it also happens on their websites. We can't forget about them.
Yeah.
Thank you very much to share your insights and bring in your perspective. I guess what we could take away that building networks and strengthening cooperation is key to work together on fighting such violation and risks online. Andrew, you've just tipped some possible solutions how we can protect users online. Maybe you give us some more thoughts about this?
Yes, and again, emphasizing, I'm not speaking on behalf of the IWF, but I'll happily give some comments. Just to expand on again, briefly on a couple of things I touched on earlier, age verification, you can age verify in a privacy preserving way. Two mechanisms you can use for that. One is facial scanning. And there's some data published by an organization called EuroDIG, and also I think others that actually implement the technology. If you do a search, there were some comments in the news in the last few days, so they published data to give a view on the accuracy of that, in particular for those children aged from around 13, because there was some comments from the UK regulator that facial scanning wasn't especially accurate to determine whether someone was aged above 13. But the reason that matters is because some of the popular social media platforms, if you look at their terms of service, you might be surprised to know that they specify a minimum user age of 13. I appreciate in practice that's maybe not widely enforced, but actually the data from EuroDIG suggests that you could just use facial rec scanning for that purpose. Similarly, there's some work underway at the moment using the European ID system, where you could just disclose to a platform not your identity, not your date of birth, but if there's a minimum or maximum age required, it could simply disclose to it that you are indeed over or under that age and no other data at all. And I think long term, that's probably a very good solution, but it does require you to have credentials stored on a platform. So that may not always work for children because they don't always have those forms of ID. The other sort of main technology briefly, since it came up in the last session, client-side scanning. I will maintain that you can absolutely do that in a privacy-preserving manner if it's for known CSAM. Because all you're doing is looking at an image to see does it match a hash of known CSAM. There's little to no risk of false positives, and certainly the IWF's experience from 25 years is we've yet to have any false positives. There are some papers out there that suggest there are flaws in client-side scanning. From looking at those papers, I would politely comment that if you implement the technology badly, then there are flaws. But don't implement it badly, then you bypass those flaws. So one of the papers comments on some known attacks, but because they're known attacks, you can implement the technology in ways that don't suffer from that. The other comment, I guess, just and I'll finish, is some of the privacy protections that are widely used. What people maybe don't realize is some of those privacy protections also bypass cybersecurity. So you actually, in implementing what you believe are privacy protections, in some cases, you're actually leaving yourself more open to attack. And as you understand, if you don't have cybersecurity, then you have no privacy. So the worst case scenario is if you think you have privacy, but you don't have security, then you'll maybe be far more exposed than if you have concerns about privacy and act differently. I can happily expand on that if there are questions, or offline if that's easier. But as I say, client-side scanning and age verification, I think are two important tools, and they can both be done in privacy-preserving ways. I'll stop there.
Thank you very much, Andrew. And I would like to ask for the moment a last question to Sujonash. we've heard about from Andrew what tools are in place and what already existing, and but what developments or improvements do you foresee for this technology in future, and how this will impact the internet environment?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we have to understand that AI technologies are moving quite fast and faster every year, every minute actually. Just look what we have with OpenAI right now. And the AI models get more smarter, more sophisticated, more accurate. But there's one problem with it. The problem is that we need to have accurate data as well to train them with. So the likes as mentioned, like CSAM and all of that, it really helps. And we also partnering with the police department and the regulatory authority, the communications regulatory authority, and we kind of trying to build a new kind of models as a next phase. So we are partnering further and to build even more accurate and more smarter ways to detect actually the age of the person. So it's a children, it's under 13 or is more. And of course, the new thing that we are exploring is because of this boom of AI, so we are looking to analyze as well as a textual information. So the abuse starts not with images, actually. It starts with text before even exchange of some ideas, some keywords that would specify that what is this all content is all about. And so the CSAM, as I mentioned, so yes, we are now fighting and trying to look for CSAM actually, which is visual representation, right? But textual is also important. And yeah, we are looking further, training those models, getting more information and trying to make it so that it learns on top of that. So as colleague mentioned, yes, it's really hard right now to get the accurate results, but human operators is also required. So further still, I believe that we will be going there anyways. Would it be possible to use some sort of OpenAI technologies or all of that? I think no, because of privacy concerns. But the good part is that if we are to build a very specific, very task-oriented machine learning algorithm, could be based on large language models, but it's built privately for this specific purpose, then I believe we can work wonders with that because it's very specified. Yes.
Would you please come to us and use the microphone? So. So it's recommended to take a seat to introduce yourself and ask your question or bring up your comment. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. First of all, it was really interesting. My question is a little bit technical. I'm interested what kind of technical strategies you use with your AI to make it more inclusive and linguistically accessible for everyone throughout the part, like the territorial part that you use AI for to detect.
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, as mentioned before, so we are web intelligence gathering platform, meaning that we use a lot of proxies basically. So we have at our possession like a few 100 million or 100 million proxies, and we can access any location. And so the first technical problem is to actually know where such content might be. And this is where we are collaborating with governmental institutions, which signals to us where to look for this content. The second part is to actually go there physically, well, physically in a sense in computing, try to search for this and confirm whether it's right or not. And if so, we're just simply scanning those images, comparing and converting them to the CSAM hashes. If it matches, then we know what it is, and we are basically sending through automated means to the regulatory authority to check it. If it doesn't match, so there's a new type that we cannot catch every CSAM event, so we have to predict somehow. And thus we have this second model. The first model is actually checking the hashes with CSAM, and the second model is to actually predict or analyze the imagery that we have with known facts like underage, nudity, and basically send it to the human operator to confirm.
Can I have another question?
Sure.
What are your strategies for exposure management in case of like vulnerable groups, especially like to not expose their information?
What is important to understand that this solution is contained. It works in a contained environment, and is actually regulatory authority is owning this solution. We ourselves are providing like services like for proxies and for software development, but we ourselves, we are not analyzing it. But for privacy contents, how we build a solution is as soon as it finds something and it just extracts it and analyzes and labels this data, so we no longer need this data. So we are having a metadata about it, like my colleague mentioned. What is the server? What is the location? Where exactly? Like if there are 1,000 pages, on which page it was found, and then how it was labeled. So we no longer need the physical image, so we just remove it, and we don't keep any records. So, and even I think that's like if we speak about privacy and even especially like children. Right, so we don't need to hold this information because, well, of course, it's damaging. So if that answers your question.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. You can, yeah. Thank you very much for your contribution. I saw many hands. First, I saw Desara. Please come to us. And then I would like to ask Maria and Sabrina if there are also comments or questions in the remote area to have a fair discussion from both kind of words. Desara.
Hello, Desara from Vrije University of Brussels, or Free University of Brussels. I have one question and one comment. I'll start with a comment. I think it's important to make the distinction because I had the feeling that this distinction was not made between client-side scanning technology and the detection of known CSAM. They are two different things, and currently detection of known CSAM does not use client-side scanning technology. And so detection happens in interpersonal communication services or in publicly available content, but not in by using client-side scanning. And what is client-side scanning? It's a technology that it's not yet in use, but it's supposed to be used if the proposed regulation that we mentioned in the previous workshop is going to be implemented, not for detecting CSAM. And what it will do, it basically is, there is a tool, there is an app, something like an app, that will be installed in all devices, in all phones of every user in the EU, and it will detect, it will try to detect CSAM before the image gets sent to the other person. So at the moment that we decide to send somebody else an image, before it gets put into WhatsApp, for example, and this is the idea that it sort of prevents, so the aim is to not interfere with end-to-end encryption, because once it's put in WhatsApp, then it's end-to-end encryption, and it means we cannot access it because of privacy reasons. But this, of course, leads to sort of some circumvention of end-to-end encryption, because anyway, we are assessing the material before it gets sent. While my question is for Oxylab, I wanted to ask if you have, if there have been any false positives related to the detection of CSAM, and whether this has resulted in any person being falsely accused and prosecuted.
No. So we have a false positives. That's why we have a second iteration with the authority, trying to improve the accuracy of the model. So as I said, so only like 2 to 3 cases were reported to police, and there were legit cases for accusation. So
okay, thanks.
Thank you very much.
Andrew wants to react.
Yeah, I'll make a comment, but try to be brief. So again, on client-side scanning, two thoughts. One is some of the existing messaging systems already use client-side scanning, but you don't know that. So for example, if you put a URL into WhatsApp, it will typically generate an image of the page. That's client-side scanning. It's not labeled as that, but that's absolutely, it's scanning your message, working out that you put in a URL and it's fetching an image of the page. So it's the same technology as that, but obviously for a different purpose. In terms of implementation, you could absolutely have a generic application that did it in some way. But personal view, I'd prefer to see WhatsApp, for example, expand its use of client-side scanning and actually do it inside the app, rather than have a generic app on a device. I've had a similar discussion with Meredith Whitaker at Signal, who's, in my view, made some technically incorrect assertions about client-side scanning is by definition impinges on privacy, and suggested that if her own coders wrote the code within the app, then you don't have a concern about what the scanning is doing because you've written the code yourself, you know what it does, you're in control. So that's why I'd rather see it inside the app as opposed to having a generic application provided by somebody else that you had to install on your device, but there are different solutions.
Okay, thank you very much. Then I see several hands, but first I want to ask Maria and Sabrina if there are comments or questions remotely.
We did have several comments. I'm not sure if you want to comment on that, or just, people are sharing thoughts. So if you want, I can voice them, or we could take questions and then
please.
You can read it and decide whether you want to comment on that or no.
Please voice them so that we can all.
Okay. So,
can you hear everybody, Maria?
Okay, so we have the first comment from Jordan, if I'm reading it correctly. The age limit for social media is often due to GDPR. B, age verification without disclosing other parts of your identity to the platform is possible. However, you disclose to the verification system that you are using this platform, which sometimes might be even worse in terms of privacy. And then one more comment from Tatani. It can be done without letting the verification system know which platform you're using. Not easy, but possible. The verification system gives you verification token without knowing where you use it. And then we have one more. Google already uses CAM in client-side scanning. Find more information than probably.
So it's not only Google. Apple also rolled out last year nudity detection, or they at least say so that they will do. And some people get very, very reactive to that. I know that they said that they will not analyze this data and not send it somewhere, but still it's there. To my opinion, actually, which is my own opinion, not influenced by a company or anyone. So there are platforms out there that collects fast information about any use of your email, for example. You actually don't need age verification when you're entering social platforms, because the social platforms already know who you are and what age group you are, what your things that you do on the internet are, like, where you visit frequently. Because those systems are very integrated and they're used for businesses and they're used for boosting sales, boosting their ads and all of that. And in my experience, I had once a chance to work with such a system, and it's very, very intelligent. Actually, there's another thing where those examples are actually good examples. It's fighting fraud. Because if you're collecting that much of information, of course, there's a question about privacy, non-privacy. But if you can identify fraudsters and then, forbid committing crime using credit cards, for example, and all of that. So it's also good. But there's a really thin line between when this data should be used and when it's not.
Okay, thank you. And you want to
actually take question.
Okay. So then I would also, due to gender balance question, I would like to invite you here. Please introduce yourself and share your comments or question with us. And then we have another hand there. Okay, maybe you are second one then.
Yeah, thanks everyone for the discussion. My name is Callum Vogue. I work for the Internet Society, and we're mainly looking at this topic through the lens of encryption and how things like client-side scanning might interact with encryption, and as you said, the expectations that users might have for privacy when they use encryption. So my question is actually about what are some of the technical risks when it comes to client-side scanning? So for example, how could client-side scanning databases be targets of attack, or are there any specific risks for when data is processed on device or if it's processed off device? So maybe some more details there would be very helpful. And that kind of brings me to a connected question, which is when the EU is maybe deciding if they're going to support any of these technologies or accredit them, what security measures should they be looking at, and then also how should they be weighing up maybe conflicting rights when it comes to this space? Thank you.
So are you able to answer this question, how we can ensure this?
I think I can comment a little bit on the first part on the client side. So it turns out I was hacked as well using WhatsApp, and actually in the same way that colleagues was mentioned, like sending an URL and then trying to parse this URL within an application, and that application actually what it did, it broke into my phone and it actually started get this whole data out. And yeah, that was a kind of one of the things that raises suspicions, because we know, for example, that there are malicious agencies who are building quite sophisticated software like Pegasus, for example, if you heard it. Which hacks into any device basically, and it takes any data that they want. So the client side actually also has some sort of challenges. First of all, any device can be rooted, so you can do anything with that. You can take down this application, dissect it, and make it reverse engineering efforts and make it so it doesn't serve its purpose, but it's actually making things worse. The second thing is the encryption that's being used right now for transport, it's not that robust. You can build your own certificates, you can craft your certificates, you can install those bogus certificates into the device, and then you have the encryption basically nullified. So those are the biggest risks right now, because we don't yet have technologically proof encryption methods available.
We talk about the transport of the scans. Of course.
Even when you're using, for example, okay, so suppose you are a mobile user, right? You're using, let's say, X provider mobile data. It turns out some of the providers can read your data. So it doesn't really matter if it's in secure channels or not. So there is a few challenges that we have to solve as well.
Okay, thank you. And Andrew.
In terms of the question about whether it should be on or off device, ironically, one of the issues caused by additional, much more widespread use of encryption is it's a lot harder to do it off device. Because when it leaves the device, the data is typically encrypted, so it almost forces the scanning to be done on device, which is perhaps an unintended consequence of the push for more use, of more widespread use of encryption. So it's literally the only place you can actually undertake the scanning. And I suppose the comment worth saying, again, sort of the end-to-end encryption is also a very helpful attack vector, because you don't know when data has been exfiltrated from your device.
Yes.
And unfortunately, some of the blind push to end-to-end encryption of lots of metadata is hiding what are called indicators of compromise, which are really important signals used by the sort of cyber defenses on our systems. And if you lose those indicators of compromise, it's very hard to identify when data is being exfiltrated from your system. And that's something which I think is becoming an increasing problem, because the cryptologists aren't cybersecurity specialists. There's a contradiction between those two areas. And I'm working with some cybersecurity companies who are horrified by some of the trends in encryption, as are some of the CISOs in some of the big Fortune 500 companies, because they get fined if their defenses are penetrated and they lose data. And it's increasingly hard for them to have effective defenses because of the more widespread use of encryption. And the sort of fines we're talking about is some recently in the US, some financial institutions were each fined $200 million for these compromises. So these are not trivial problems in terms of just the financial, let alone the personal consequences. Okay.
Thanks you. We are running straight to the end of our workshop. I guess that we have you, and maybe I would like to ask then if there is a last comment or questions remotely. Okay, and then Francesco and Sophia have the challenge to wrap up this discussion for us. So, but.
Hello, my name is João. I'm from EuroDIG, and actually, when we were crafting our messages, we talked about age verification like a digital wallet. We had this idea, we developed for a bit, but eventually it didn't make the final cut because there were two concerns that we couldn't overcome at that setting. So I just wanted to hear your thoughts on them. The first one was that using a digital wallet, like a centralized digital wallet for Europe, for example, would pose like a huge security risk. Even if you just send your token, yes, it meets the age, no, it doesn't meet the age, you still have to store the information somewhere. And if you centralize it, it will be like a huge target. Like everyone will want to attack that because it's so valuable. Every European information is in a single place. So do you think this is a risk or just a non-problem? And the second one is that we would be excluding people in difficult and fragile situations, people that don't have email, people that don't have documents, like illegal migrants, for example. So even if they are not legal citizens of a country, they should not be banned from the internet or from specific services on the internet. So do you think this would be something that we should consider when talking about age verification and digital wallets?
Okay, thank you very much. Who wants to take this?
I can comment a little bit. I used to work with crypto technologies as well. And I know that governments, especially in Dubai, they're experimenting with a thing called ledgers. So it's a private crypto chains where you store basically all this information which is private to the citizen, right? What kind of assets it owns, age, birth, banking, financial institution data, all of that. And it's based on private networks, meaning that it should not be accessible publicly. But as I said, I don't want to be that pessimistic person here, but like what's on the internet is basically hackable. It doesn't really matter, it's private or not. But I think if we to store this information on tokens in a blockchain, so we have to really consider what it is, and because it stays there basically forever. And there are tools to manipulate, somehow aggregate this data, so it's complicated. And so for those cases that you mentioned, like people who are migrating, e-identity, like digital identity, could be a solution. Where if person comes to the EU, it could get a temporarily EU identity, then use basically that to access services. So basically, if we're moving to the society which is more towards digital services and all of that, so it becomes more connected anyways. So it should be simple.
Okay, a quick comment?
Yeah, just a very quick comment. I think there's a valid concern about having a big target. Having said that, there are mechanisms you can use to defend the target, such as not having it literally all in one database, but dispersing it and having protection so that you can't link the data in, say, the age bit to the identity, the name, and so on. So it's a valid concern. It would certainly need to be done, in my view, by a state actor to give it an appropriate scale of protections. I wouldn't want it to be done by the private sector, not least of which, because dare I say it, if you look at all the social media platforms, the private sector has a history of abusing data far worse than any government. But yeah, there's good concerns, but you can reduce the risk.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. So, and I see one hand raised up in the remote room. So please, if I see it correctly, Jutta Kroll, please take the floor.
Yes, thank you for giving me the floor. I just wanted to address some of the issues that were raised by the next to last speaker, I would say, or the people who questioned. When it comes to, firstly, the vulnerable groups that may not have an European ID or something else, a valid personal document, there are several systems that we have learned at the Global Age Assurance Standardization Summit in Manchester in April, several solutions to address that issue and to help people to not only to identify, but at least to verify their age in online services without having a valid document. And the second term that I would like to bring into the debate is the double blindness of age assurance systems, which addresses a point that was made by Jörn Erbgut in the chat. That of course, if the service provider, either the service provider knows who has verified or vouched for the age, that might cause privacy issues, as well as if the verifying organization knows which service is used. But this is addressed by the approach of double blindness, where neither the verifier nor the service provider will know of each other. Only the person in the middle that needs an age verification or proof of their own belonging to a certain age group has the certain knowledge, and both other sides are double blinded. And I do think that could be a very good approach. The German government has already commissioned the development of a demonstrator, and probably in September this year, we will know better whether that works or whether it doesn't work, but I'm pretty sure it will work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jutta Kroll, for your information and sharing your experience from the Global Age Assurance Summit in Manchester. So we are running out of time. I see several hands up, but I guess that the speakers, the attendance, all were around here today and maybe also tomorrow, so you can catch each other and go in the conversation bilateral. I'm really tied to the schedule and want to finish, but before we close the session, we have Francesco and maybe also Sophia wrapping up our discussion.
Okay, Sophia told me to start, so yeah, thank you. You can add whatever you want, whenever you want, it's always okay. Hi, I'm Francesco Vecchi from EuroDIG. I'm the reporter for this workshop. Actually, I already attended also the workshop about almost the same topic earlier. And again, I would like to thank you all the panelists for the insightful presentation. It was really rich, so it's really hard to me to try to sum up what has been said because there are so many different things. I'll try to focus, well, what I'll try to say is what we can all kind of agree upon. Okay, I'll ask you at the end if you agree on sending a message that says these kind of main priorities, but then you can all check on the shared platform for comments in the next few days, especially after EuroDIG. If you want to add some comments, if you think that something was going missing, please do. Okay, it's a collective process, so absolutely feel free of doing whatever you want. Okay, I believe that the main points have been, I'd say, three, but very, very complex ones. The first one was about the type of content. It is actually important in this kind of, in this issue. And first of all, self-generated abuse material, pathological content, and actually also related to this, the privacy paradox that sometimes, claiming for more privacy practices can lead actually to a decrease in safety. The second part, which is actually even more complicated, is the part related to new technical approaches that try to be privacy respectful. We mentioned especially age verification and client scanning, but actually, I believe that all of us should agree that it is really important to differentiate between client scanning and detection of CSA. They're not exactly the same thing, and some actors actually already use client scanning without infringing privacy, especially WhatsApp, Google, and Apple, and so on and so forth. There are actually more concerns, generally speaking, regarding anti-grooming techniques, and the fact they use both visual and textual data, and probably we should still need some development on this, but I mean, companies like
it's coming there. Yes.
Precisely. There are, of course, the typical concerns about AI, so biases, quality of data sets, accuracy, of course, and especially also inclusivity and accessibility in health concerns. We need accurate data and probably with task-oriented models. Task-oriented models can actually work pretty well in this sense. Yes. Finally, just a couple of things that are related more to the political authorities. Of course, we constantly need the check by authorities. So what companies can do is just to detect data and signal issues, but then it is up to the authorities to make the final decision. And second, this is also a topic I'm really into, as my fellow youth leaguers know, but apparently a European ID seems a sort of long-term possible solution, not yet, but provided that it is based on blockchain or other kind of encrypting techniques. Finally, and actually I wanted to focus especially on the contribution of Andrew and Dana in this sense, even though it hasn't been that part of the discussion, but no one actually questioned it. So I'm going to propose it to you as well. The relevance of a diversified multi-stakeholder approach, especially in trying to involve technicians on the one side to provide the solutions, but also civil society, political authorities and representations, but also people that don't come from technical backgrounds. I believe that you mentioned psychologists, but we can also mention that people working in ethics, cybersecurity experts that don't always talk with encryptioners, and so on and so forth. Well, if you all agree with this, okay, attempt of summing up the session, okay, please.
One little correction: blockchain does not encrypt data.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
Should stand on private blockchains if we talk.
Okay. Thanks, Jon. And maybe Sophia, do you want to add something or?
I think that we should cover.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks for your wrap up, and you are all invited to cooperate with us and finalize these messages in the next coming days. And then also thanks to all participants who shared insight and thoughts with us, and also a big thank to all of you to be with us to promote our discussion and be interested in this necessary topic. Thank you very much and have a fine day.
Thank you.